Okay, what I'm going to quickly do is show you how a new visualiser that we've got for our iPads, how they work in school, basically an idea of how many we need to order for people. So if you're interested in this sort of product, let me know. We have the visualiser, which is this sort of claw thing here, and you attach it to your iPad mini, and that will allow us to essentially show items, whether that's school work or objects, underneath them using the camera. I'm also going to demonstrate something called reflector, which essentially allows us to reflect or mirror our iPad mini screens onto our projector screens, so we can see them on the board and share them with students. So first of all, students' work. We can use them to demonstrate students' work, and to do that, if I come over to here on the iPad, if I press camera, underneath the camera in the visualiser we can see I've got a student book, or in this case my little notes here for this demonstration. And the idea is that we'll be able to share students' work with the rest of the class, which I think is a very powerful thing that we can do. We can also annotate using Active Board. I can click on Desktop Annotate, use my pen, and I can highlight sections of that book and show that to the students and share that information. And basically say, okay, here's a good piece of writing, perhaps in English, this section here needs some improving. And also using the Active Board software, we can take snapshots with the camera software on there and record that, so that later on, perhaps, if we wanted to see progression with a student, we could show that's how they started off. Here's the second piece of work, and we can see that it's improved massively since the last time they did that piece of work. Okay, so it's a really good way of recording students' work, what we've said about it, what we thought needed improving, and then reflecting back on it to see how they improve next time they've done a piece of work. So that's showing students' work, and that's using the iPad mini and the visualiser there. We could also show objects. Okay, it's my second point on here to clear those annotations. But we could show objects just here. Okay, so for instance, I have this pen here. Maybe in science, I might have a dead rat, and I can just place that underneath there. Okay, if I move my book, you will see very, very quickly that will focus in on that object. But I could have perhaps a dead rat down on there, and I can show that to the rest of the class as well. And once again, I can use the Active Board software to annotate over the top of that. And then once again, I can use the camera on it to save that as a snapshot and return to that image later on. And lastly, one of the things that the primary might be more interested in is I can show and share the screen of my iPad mini with the rest of the class, and so it's more interactive. So to demonstrate that quickly, I've got an app on my iPad mini that I would like students to just clear that annotation, but I'd like my students to interact with. So I might pass the iPad mini around the class. So let's just unscrew that. So I might be giving this to Susan, who's in my class. Okay, so this is perhaps how we can share apps that we have on our iPad with the rest of the class and get them interacting with the iPad and sharing it with the rest of the class. And so perhaps the whole class can join in with the activity. This is Logic Games. It's a great app, it's free. This is just one of the many ones, Tense. So I'm going to go into this here. And Tense is about basically trying to work out where tents should go next to trees, and they're only allowed to go next to the tree, but you can't have any tents that are connected to each other. And essentially, let's just clear, let's reset that puzzle. So essentially, we can go around, I can pass the iPad mini around, and we can have a discussion. I can place a tent there, but I can't have a tent here. It's not next to a tree, and it's also next to the other tent. So logically, it can't go there. So maybe it could go here. Okay? But essentially, it's a logic game that you can start sharing with the rest of the class, and they could be shouting out, and I could be teaching. I could say, well, what about here? How many people think that this might work in an area we could go? Through trial and error, and using logic as a class, perhaps we could share that information. Anyway, that's just one single idea. There are many, many different games and things you could use these for. Thank you.